And, you could have done practically anything after the Cube. You chose to start your own venture, Menlo Park. What is Menlo all about?
It's Menlo Creek, not Menlo Park. Menlo Park's a town. Menlo Creek's my pretend creek that doesn't actually exist, but that's okay. There is a creek that divides Menlo Park and Palo Alto and also San Mateo.
It's so confusing for us non-Californians. Sorry about that.
No problem. Well, what I thought I would do mainly is help coach executives on how to do long-form interviews. And I've done some of that, and that is part of our practice. A lot of times it's new startup CEOs that are maybe a little bit younger, who have a little bit older marketing executive, maybe with hair that looks more like yours and mine, a little bit more gray, to help them learn how to package their messaging and how to really do well in a long-form interview. The other thing, though, that then I started helping people create their own content. Because in today's world, especially, you've been in media forever, right? The business media, and you talk to anyone in comms, is a really challenging environment because it's shrinking every day, and the number of reporters and publications are shrinking every day. So I think it's incumbent on companies and organizations to go ahead and start creating your own content and use things like we're doing here with StreamYard, use distribution platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn. You don't have to wait for that Wall Street Journal article. That's great if you get it and if you're featured in the New York Times, but you don't have to wait for that. So really helping people create their own content. And then the last piece is really content curation. And this is probably the biggest opportunity, because what we see, Evan, is people invest all this money, say at a trade show, right, to put together the demos, to put together the classes. They put together all this work. It's a beautiful thing. And the show ends and the trucks pull away from the convention center. And a lot of time that stuff just sits on the shelf. So, how do you curate that content? I often equate it to like an IPO. An IPO is a mile marker in a company's life, and it's an exciting day, but that's not the end of the journey. So when you hit publish on your content, if you readjust your thinking around asynchronous consumption, that's just a mile marker in the life of that content. But there should be stuff in that asset that you can use over and over and over again. And then really the third kind of concept is as a small company, and the Cube's relatively small. I'm very, very small, compared to CNBC or Bloomberg. It's really hard to create a wave. Right? But it's really easy to surf one. So the whole trick is to find, content that you have in your library that's relative to what's happening out in the community right now, and then kind of interject relevant stuff into that flow versus trying to create your own wave, which is really, really hard, as a smaller company. You just don't have the reach. Those are a couple of tricks.
That's really, really great insights. And you've interviewed tens of thousands of business and thought leaders in the tech industry. Share an anecdote or two. Who's left some of the best impressions on you? Who are the most memorable?
I think the one that steps out the most and who I reference the most is probably David Pottruck. So David Pottruck used to be the CEO of Schwab. And back when I was in business school in the late 90s, is kind of when e-commerce was really disrupting a lot of different industries. And in the stock trading industry at that point in time, they went from, a percentage of the transaction. I think E-Trade came out with 1999 trades or 995. And so he had to reinvent his business and really kill his own business to stay competitive. And he came and spoke at our school, and I had the privilege of hosting him. And what stuck with me is he's a wrestler. He went to Penn and he wrestled. And he said, communication is a skill that every CEO needs to work on. It's just a skill. Don't be afraid of it. You practice just like you practice a wrestling move or anything else that you want to get better as a skill. He was so articulate, Evan, in his presentation style. And we just said, how did you get so good? And he didn't have a big ego. And he just said, it's a skill. A CEO, a leader's job is to communicate to your internal constituents, right? The company, what are we doing? And please come along for this mission and get excited about it. I'm excited. It's kind of your ecosystem, if you will, which is your partners and your customers and the people that matter. And then it's the external audience. And if you're a good CEO, you're really communicating. And that's the one I think that sticks out the most, because people need to adopt kind of a pragmatic thought process about it and just practice, get a coach, and go out and do it. So that's the one that really stands out the most. There's a lot of other ones, like Scott Cook from Intuit, an amazing guy. Often I quote him, and the quote I use from him that he said is, build your company on low-cost experiments. So if, everyone's trying to drive for innovation now, and really one of the keys to innovation is simply having more people try more things in the company in low-cost experiments. And that's kind of gets to this democratization of data and letting more people have more data and access to the tools to try things. And if you let more people try more things, the simple math of the funnel, you'll start to get more innovation. And I thought, he started his company as basically a checkbook because his wife was having a hard time balancing the checkbook and reconciling it. And he's still just as focused. I mean, he still says today, the payment systems stink. It's super hard for entrepreneurs. There's still a long ways to go. So he's another one that just really stands out. And I would say the last thing, Evan, is the really great ones know that it's a combination of luck. It's a combination of a lot of things that make them successful. They're very appreciative of the people that help them get there and the steps along the way. Martin Mikos, another fantastic leader at HackerOne, who is very personable, really shares intimate stories of challenging times to help, again, because the whole idea is you want to get your people excited for the journey to jump in and really pull hard on the oars and not just be kind of sitting there going through the motions. So those are a few that really stand out.
Wow, wonderful advice. What an amazing, discussion. I'm going to look up some of those old chats and have a look at them. They sound incredible. So what is the day in the life of Jeff Frick like at Menlo Creek? What is your workflow and your process like? I'm curious to compare it to mine and others.
So I've got two shows that I'm working on now. I've got Work 20XX, which is my show kind of on the future of work. And that was originally season 1 sponsored by WebEx, which is great. Started right out in the depths of COVID and trying to get really best practices about asynchronous communication, hybrid work, et cetera. And that's now going to start to evolve into more reskilling and career change and some of the more kind of topical topics in terms of as we navigate these kind of crazy times. Turn the Lens is my other show, and that is really just a fun show. I can go wherever I want and didn't have any kind of a sponsor. But what I wanted it to mainly be is a test bed to say, don't do what I say, do what I do. And so specifically, film long-form interviews and then chop them up into little pieces and then flow them into the stream. And so what happens if on a day that I'm not paying attention or I'm not doing an interview is I'm looking at the news, I'm looking what's happening in the flow, I'm looking for an opportunity to go back and grab an asset and then intersect that into the flow. Most of my posting is on LinkedIn. Most of the activity that I do is on LinkedIn. I'm starting to play a little bit with Yahoo Shorts, and there's a little bit of Twitter and this and that, but it's mainly LinkedIn. Because the other thing I think that you can do now with LinkedIn that you couldn't do before in an old broadcast model is, right, old broadcast model was played on the radio. It's got some crappy conversion rate. Hopefully when somebody wants to buy a mattress, they happen to be listening that day and they go down to sleep train. Where on LinkedIn now, driving engagement versus really reach, you can see by name, by title, by company, where they live, the people that engage with your content. And so really part of my consulting message is, who are the 100 people that matter most to you in your business? Can you name them by name? And then who are they? And then get with them in LinkedIn and start to engage with them on LinkedIn. Because what you're trying to do, if you remember the movie Social Dilemma on Netflix, and if people haven't watched it, they should. There's a very scary scene, right, where the 3 AI guys inside the computer are deciding what to send to the kid's feed to get them to re-engage with the app. It's really, really scary. But if you take as a content publisher, I want those people on my team. When Evan is scrolling through your LinkedIn feed and you're on a particular topic, I want the AI in LinkedIn to choose my post to stick in your feed to keep you on the platform for another 2 minutes. So that's this concept of aligning with the AI and training with the AI in the platforms to get to the people that you want. And then you can look at who engaged, right? They had a positive affirmation on your content, whether that was a reaction or a comment or a repost. And then you can say, are these the types of people that you're trying to get your message to? If not, let's adjust our targeting and start to engage with those other people. Because what you're doing is you're building this connective fabric inside the platform, again, which will hopefully get those AI engines to increase the probability of presenting your content to keep people on platform a little bit longer. And that's a pretty important concept. So I'm usually just posting. I'm looking for stuff that I know that fits in the feed. Sometimes it's my own stuff, might be something that you do, might be a TED Talk, might be, I did kind of a deep dive on the founders of OpenAI because I wanted to learn more. So, one of the things I love about theCUBE and what I do now and what you do is, it's great to read the summary article, but I'd much rather hear the people in their own voice and really, look at them in the eye while they're talking, hear what they say, get all the richness of the context, to really start to understand what's going on. And you can do that now. And it's so wonderful with tools like YouTube and stuff that, we can go back and listen to really important people talking about really important topics that we didn't happen to be in the room when they had that presentation.
Fantastic. Well, you're such an easy interview. Just I can just sort of sit back and relax as you drop all those gems. But some interviews are not so easy. So what's your strategy for kind of drawing out interesting and insightful comments from guests? Sometimes it's kind of hard work.
Right.
What do you do in those cases when you're really kind of struggling to have, an impactful conversation?
Yeah, well, a couple things. One thing is, frameworks, right? Do you have some frameworks? And frameworks are always good just to help, give you some guidelines. So one of my favorite frameworks that I use a lot is kind of in everything, right? Good comes in threes. So step one, catalyst. Why are we having this conversation today? Was there something in the news? Did you release a new product? Was there some major announcement? Why is this important right now? And then take it to the next step, which is to the macro level. Okay, so how does that catalyst thing tie to something bigger that a lot of people should be interested in, and why does it really matter, and why does it matter to you, the guest, and with it, so hopefully then it matters to me, and then it should matter to the greater audience. And then the last thing I think that's getting more pub now, but I think a lot of people don't pay attention is to the why, right? So then it's like, why are you doing this? And what you generally find is there's a story, whether it was something in their career or something in their life, as to why this particular problem is important to that individual. And if you take the time to kind of drill down, usually you can pull that out of them. I mean, some people are just tough and you can't get anything out of them. But, I like to tell people, and again, a good trick from theCUBE was that it's really hard to read a script and make it sound natural, which is why they pay actors and actresses millions of dollars to do it. But it's easy to have a conversation about a topic that you're both knowledgeable about and also passionate about. So, have your talking notes on the side from the press team or your PR team, but then just talk about what you're passionate about and why you're passionate about. And that usually will come through. And then, again, the last trick, you get past 20 minutes, they're out of their notes anyway, and you start getting into some really interesting stuff. My buddy John Fort likes to say, most successful CEOs are either running towards something or running away from something in their past. And his interviews always start with childhood. So, if you can kind of get past the initial kind of PR-y stuff, usually you can get a little bit under the covers and really find out what makes that person tick. And again, as a leader, you want people that are inspired by the reason that you're ticking so that they're going to join your journey and help. So I think it's a really important thing. And it's ultimately about authenticity. Being who you are, and then hopefully there's people that want to join your mission.
Well, great insights. I often get asked, how do I break into this field of social, digital content creation, digital media? Of course, you and I have been doing it for, a decade or decades, really. But any advice for aspiring, content creators in the tech enterprise space, best practices or otherwise?
Yeah, just I'll steal from Nike, right? Just do it. I mean, what's so changed today from, when we were both a little bit younger and a little darker heads is that there's all these tools now and all these platforms that you can get direct access to the people that you're trying to communicate with. So before that, there was a big gatekeeper called distribution and trying to get your story in the local paper, where there was only, a small number of say, TV channels, and you couldn't connect directly with your audience. Well, now the tools are cheap, the tools are accessible, and so just do it and start to build your audience. Pick a mission and stay true to it and stay true to the course. The bad news of that is it's cheap and easy for everybody else too. So don't be a me too. Don't try to copy someone else. Find your own voice, find your own authenticity, and the only way to do that is to do it. And and screw up along the way and learn as you go and course correct as you kind of develop your voice and develop your themes. But there's really just no substitute to just turning on record and doing it. And you're not going to be good at the beginning. But it's really the only way to learn. And I think that's the most important thing is what to just try, just try, and you'll get better and better and better instead of planning and this, that, and the other.
Yeah, Mr. Beast had a pretty insightful comment in that if you look back at your last or first 10 videos, of course, he's a YouTube monster, literally.
Right.
You should hate them. You should look back on your earlier stuff and just like be, oh, that's awful. Hence the need for continual improvement. So fantastic advice. So we're back in the conference world again. I'm attending and traveling quite a bit, as are you. And theCUBE, back in the day was notorious for having that, massive presence at big conferences. What's your approach to, social and digital media at events? Is it the theCUBE model? I mean, I go, as a solopreneur to conferences and live stream, live tweet, live blog. How will tech events evolve over the next year or two?
Yeah, it's to be determined, right? And we're still kind of feeling it out. And full disclosure, I haven't been to a lot of them because I can cover them so much more efficiently from the seat here in my office, and I can cover multiple at the same time. I think the biggest thing is that in old events used to be determined by the availability of space at Moscone, right, or the availability of space at the Sands Convention Center, and you shoehorned your event into that, and then you shoehorned your product releases, your customer activities, your partner activities, all these things into this one event. And I think what will happen eventually is, potentially that breaks down where, if you want to have a really great customer event or you want a really great partner event, have that. But should every single product group within a large multi-billion-dollar enterprise time their product releases to come out for the week of May 5th? I don't know. There's certainly, being together is extremely valuable. Building those types of relationships is extremely valuable. But I just think the mega conference, we'll see. I think you can break it up and much be more kind of purpose built and more specifically targeted to certain types of activities that don't necessarily have to all be combined. But we'll see. There's a lot of, kind of legacy momentum there. It's what people know. It's what they organize. And it's kind of like broadcast numbers versus engagement numbers. That's what they've measured in the past. That's what they know. It rolls up the line. But is it really broadcast, or is your message being received by the people that you want it to be received by? So I think it's a little different challenge. But they're certainly roaring back. I see, lots of stuff coming up. But then you get these crazy conflicts where you get competitors booking their conferences the same week of the year to force people to pick. And I don't know. I guess you could say there's a reason to do that, but but events are strong. They'll always be strong. They'll always be great to get together with people. But there's just much more efficient ways, I think, to express a lot of communication. With continuous delivery of products now in the software space. Why are you timing it up for that first week of May? What if your stuff comes out 2 months earlier? Should you hold your release? I don't know. I don't know that I would.
Yeah, and I think another trip to Vegas is something we could probably all do without. But c'est la vie. It is in Orlando. It is what it is.
Well, we like Vegas here because it's a shorter flight. Orlando's a long flight, so you have a shorter flight to Orlando.
Yeah, there are pros and cons, I guess. So you and I love to experiment with new tech, and of course, I think we're all steeped in generative AI and chat GPT and experimenting with that. But there are other emerging technologies. We're going to have Apple Glasses, I think, next month. There are always new platforms, Reddit and Quora, and beyond the sort of old school digital ones. What are you experimenting with? What are you excited about on the technology side or platform side that might be relevant to the business?
Well, I'll tell you, and then you need to tell me because I think you have more experience on more platforms than I do. But again, my primary platform is LinkedIn, and I used to do a lot more on Twitter. My engagement on Twitter has not been as good, and I think of it more Twitter more as just kind of a population of the database crawl search engines. The thing I've been experimenting recently is YouTube, with YouTube and YouTube's reaction to TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat in the form of short form videos. Before, there really wasn't an easy way for YouTube to handle short interviews. It was kind of messy and sloppy. Now they've introduced this thing called Shorts. So I've started playing with Shorts within the last couple of weeks, taking my clips that I've already created and then cutting them down once again to sub 60 seconds, putting them in a vertical format, and then sending those out. I've also been playing with Substack. I think there's a really interesting opportunity with Substack. Is kind of a more creator-centric platform, it seems to be, in terms of revenue share and those types of things. I don't have any paid stuff on Substack, but I want to invest more in Substack. I think that's a really interesting platform. So those are probably the main ones. I don't really do anything on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat. I'm just not that not that organized or focused. But I'm curious. You play on all these different platforms. Do you use different ones for different things, or do you just replicate across them all, or do you find different types of engagement based on the platform?
Yeah, there's some niches, and I think Reddit's really kind of the best kept secret for technology content, and some of the subreddits are basically their own virtual networks with millions of subscribers in the various subreddits. So there's some real gold to be found there. And I think, generative AI, doing more with less basically is really interesting. Repurposing, rewriting, redelivering content, creating content in new ways, both the written word and even the spoken word and video is going to be really fascinating for us as content creators. And, live streaming. I mean, something like this platform, StreamYard, free plug for them, but there are ways to go to all the Facebooks and YouTubes and LinkedIn and Twitters live. And increasingly, that's going to be the modality that gets, the most traction. Already the algorithms, preference live video. And audio, I think, is still alive. We had the boom with Clubhouse, and Twitter Spaces is still a thing. I mean, if Reuters holds a Twitter Spaces, you get 100,000 people will show up and listen in and engage live. So there's still some pretty compelling niche opportunities. Quora is another really great platform, Q&A and publishing. But you're right, it's increasingly really hard to be across all of those platforms at once. So we need some magical AI to kind of recreate us so we can be everywhere all the time, all at once, like the movie says. So interesting. What are you looking forward to over the next few weeks, months? Any personal, travel, professional stuff coming up?
Yeah, I've been traveling a lot this last week. In fact, I just drove back from Portland late last night. So I was usually I don't schedule Monday morning meetings, so I was happy to get back, and timeliness. Really, I'm continuing this exploration like everybody is on the generative AI. I really want to better understand what it is and what the applications are and how it's going. This thing that you just talked about still is interesting, live versus not live, and what is live, and is it alive as a production methodology so that we have great conversations like we're having here that are unscripted? Is it live as a consumption timing, or is it live as a consumption method? So I think there's a lot of kind of discrete variables in there. Those are some things. I just love looking for great people saying great things. And if I find it, I just like to share it and share it over and over and over, because, the other thing is kind of open source and what open source has done both in communication as well as technology, but this ethos of sharing. And we really saw it around COVID as everyone was trying to figure out hybrid work and best practices and async and really sharing the best practices. And you get companies like GitHub that publish a book of all their procedures of how they do asynchronous communication. So, I keep beating the communication drum over and over and over, and then, looking for opportunities to help companies curate their content. And I find all kinds of interesting things there, again, sitting in the shelf that you can pull out that just have wonderful content that's highly applicable, broadly applicable to basically resurface and get that out so people can use it.
Oh, amazing. Well, it's been, we're up at the bottom of the hour here. Thanks so much for joining, Jeff, and sharing your insights, and great as always to catch up. And everyone, follow Jeff on all the usual places out there. And I look forward to chatting soon and meeting soon. Hopefully there's some event out there that'll bring us together.
Well, thank you, Evan, for having me on the show. And I'll have to find a good event in Boston to come visit you out there.
Anytime. Now's our time of the year, summer. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Look forward to next.